Let's be real, dating in the 21st century is a total shitshow. You're swiping right based on a profile that took someone 4 seconds to make, fundamentally hoping this random stranger's digital persona holds the biological cheat code for compatibility. It's ridiculous. But now, imagine if the App Store existed 50,000 years ago. You wouldn't give a fuck about their favorite Netflix show or whether they preferred adventure or cozy nights in. You'd be looking at a completely different, highly brutal set of stats. Welcome to StickPunk. Today, we're stripping away the filters, the expensive cologne, and the fancy first date dinners to ask the only question that matters: why do we actually attract each other? To understand attraction, we have to get comfortable with the idea that our brains are just ancient hardware running a modern software update. It's like trying to run cyberpunk on a Nokia. And according to evolutionary psychologist Dr. David Buss, that annoying little spark you feel when you meet someone isn't magic, it's a primitive survival hack. It starts with things we can't even consciously perceive. In fact, our ancestors quite literally smelled their way to finding the perfect genetic match. Seriously. To figure out how we got here, we need to go back, way back, to a time when a bad date didn't just result in an awkward text and a ghosting. It meant getting brutally eaten by a saber-toothed cat. Because beneath the layers of modern culture, your brain is still playing an evolutionary survival game with zero chill. Every preference you have has been curated over millions of years of. Men and women didn't just evolve to survive. They evolved to select partners who could guarantee the survival of their offspring. This is what Charles Darwin called sexual selection. It wasn't about romance. It was a hostile negotiation. Fail the selection criteria back then, and your genetic line ended right there in the dirt. No pressure, right? So what exactly were our ancestors looking for on this ultimate prehistoric checklist? We're about to break it down. Because what we call love at first sight today is actually just our ancient, subconscious lizard brain scanning for specific biological data points. It's a ruthless calculation masquerading as emotion. Let's enter Act 2, the caveman era. Grab your clubs, because the mating market is about to get incredibly primal. 50,000 years ago, the criteria for a good partner were simple, brutal, and direct. Let's start with what ancient men were unconsciously wired to look for. Geneticists and anthropologists have confirmed a recurring pattern across almost every human culture. Men consistently show a preference for a specific waist-to-hip ratio, roughly 0.7. To a caveman's subconscious brain, this wasn't an aesthetic preference. It was a data readout. It indicated optimal estrogen levels, youth, and high childbearing capability. A 0.7 ratio was basically nature saying this hardware is ready for production. In a world where infant mortality was insanely high, picking a fertile, healthy mate wasn't a type. It was the only way your lineage continued or went extinct. There were no participation trophies in evolution. Now, what did women look for? This is where it gets complicated. Because human infants are born incredibly helpless, a mother couldn't hunt, protect, and raise a newborn entirely on her own in the savannah. Therefore, women evolved to be highly selective, prioritizing indicators of resource provisioning ability. Basically, can this guy consistently bring home enough calories so my kid doesn't starve to death? Enter the classic caveman flex. Bringing home a giant mammoth leg wasn't just about sharing food with the tribe. It was a high-status display of strength, stamina, and let's be real, courage. It was the original look at my status post. If a male couldn't hunt, he couldn't provide. And in the primitive evolutionary matching game, that meant he was left out in the cold. Game over. But resources weren't everything. Ancient women also scanned for indicators of genetic stability, specifically facial and bodily symmetry. In the wild, symmetry is nature's quality control stamp. Symmetry shows that an individual had the genetic strength to resist parasites, diseases, and developmental mutations while growing up in a hostile environment. It means this specimen grew according to plan. So, the primal dance of attraction was set. Men looked for signs of youth and fertility. Women looked for signs of status, resource protection, and raw genetic health. It sounds incredibly calculating and robotic, but remember, none of this was conscious. They didn't have spreadsheets or pros and cons lists. They just felt an overwhelming illogical emotion we call attraction. Biology hid the calculation inside the feeling. And mating back then wasn't just a two-person game either. Since we survived in small tribes, social alliances mattered almost as much as your physical traits. Getting involved with a high-status mate secured better food and better protection for your offspring. But stealing that mate from a high-status rival could get you exiled from the tribe, which was essentially a death sentence. Navigating the tribal hierarchy required serious social intelligence. As authors like Christopher Ryan point out in Sex at Dawn, early human mating may have been far more cooperative, shared, and communal than our modern hyper-possessive dating world. Sharing resources and cooperative parenting within a tight-knit band significantly increased the survival rate of the group's children. Everyone was invested. But how did these visual, tribal, and resource-driven cues evolve into the intricate, invisible, often deeply confusing chemistry that dictates our dating lives today? Why is it that the very thing that is supposed to ensure our survival feels like it's killing us slowly? This transitions us into Act 3. Because sometimes, attraction isn't about what you see or what someone provides, it's about the invisible information you subconsciously sniff out. Welcome to the world of hidden chemistry and messed up instincts. In 1995, a zoologist named Klaus Wedekind conducted a simple, kind of gross experiment that would change how we view human attraction forever. The setup was this. He had a group of men wear clean t-shirts for 2 nights straight, avoiding any deodorants, colognes, or spiced foods that might interfere with their natural scent profile. Then, he put those identical sweaty shirts into boxes and asked a group of unrelated women to sniff them and rate them for attractiveness. Sounds like the pilot for a reality show that gets canceled immediately. But the results were mind-blowing. The women consistently preferred the scent of men whose immune system genes, specifically their MHC genes, were entirely different from their own. Why do we give a fuck about MHC genes? Because when 2 individuals with different MHC genes reproduce, their offspring get a highly versatile, superpowered immune system. Your subconscious mind can literally smell genetic compatibility through pheromones, steering you toward a partner who will give your potential kids the best shot at fighting off diseases. Evolution is constantly playing quality control on your behalf, which means, ironically, every time you blast yourself with half a can of body spray or expensive perfume before a big date, you are effectively jamming your partner's biological radar. You are hiding your biological resume. Once the smell test passes, your brain triggers a hormonal cocktail. According to Dr. Helen Fisher, the first stage of intense romantic attraction, the infatuation phase is driven entirely by dopamine. Dopamine gives you that intense rush of euphoria, focused energy, and obsessive drive. It's why you can't stop texting them and why you stay up until 3 a.m. talking about absolutely nothing of substance. This chemical wave temporarily blinds your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for sound logic and executive decision-making. Evolutionarily speaking, love makes you dumb on purpose. Why do we get trapped this way? Because if you saw all their flaws immediately, you'd never take the risk of staying together long enough to reproduce and raise a child. Nature traps you into bonding so the species can survive your bad logic. It's a beautifully orchestrated chemical con designed to ensure species continuation. But what happens when the initial chemical rush inevitably wears off? The initial dopamine high only lasts anywhere from several months to a couple of years. It's a temporary sprint. After that, physical, chemical attraction alone isn't enough to sustain a partnership. The job of being a couple becomes apparent. And this transitions us into the messiness of Act 4, the mind and emotion. Because human mating isn't just about reproduction. It's about raising offspring with a broken hardware update. This required a whole separate layer of psychological attraction. Why do we value things like humor, kindness, and emotional intelligence? We're about to explore how emotional safety became just as valuable as physical strength. Look at humor. Being funny is actually an evolutionary flex. A good sense of humor signals verbal intelligence, creativity, and mental flexibility, nature's indicators of a healthy and functional brain. Kindness and emotional stability signal something else entirely. A strong indicator that you won't kill your partner, you'll share resources, and you are conducive to cooperative child rearing. A volatile, selfish caveman was a massive liability to the tribe. Dr. Helen Fisher's research reveals that long-term attachment and bonding are driven by different chemicals entirely. These are the chemicals of trust, security, and deep commitment. While dopamine screams, "Let's reproduce right now," oxytocin whispers, "Let's stay together for the next 2 decades and make sure these helpless children survive the next bad software patch." This emotional alignment creates an incredibly strong psychological bond. It turns out that emotional safety is just as critical to our survival strategy as physical protection. True attraction is a delicate, often confusing dance between the intense physical cues of our caveman past and the nuanced psychological needs of our modern present. When both align, when the ancient hardware and modern software actually sync up, the evolutionary trap closes perfectly, securing the continuation of our genetic codes. But what happens when this entire ancient system is dropped headfirst into the chaotic, hyper-digital, attention-deficient world of the modern era? This is where everything gets properly fucked up. Welcome to the final act, the modern mismatch. Today, our caveman brains are forced to operate in a smartphone world that is deliberately engineered to exploit our ancient software. Ancient humans encountered maybe a few dozen potential partners in their entire lifetime. Today, a single dating app exposes you to thousands of profiles in one afternoon. And the brain panics. Psychologists call this the paradox of choice. When we have too many options, our ancient brain overloads, leading to massive dissatisfaction, anxiety, and a constant paralyzing fear of missing out on a better option that doesn't actually exist. We look for superficial data-driven markers that don't match long-term survival needs, completely overriding the chemical signals like scent and body language that kept our ancestors alive for millions of years. We are biologically mismatched. The takeaway? You can take the human out of the savannah, but you absolutely cannot take the savannah out of the human. We are walking, swiping conflicts. Your primal impulses are still calling the shots, even if you're using 5G to execute them. The next time you feel that sudden, undeniable spark for someone, remember, when it's not just you. It's millions of years of ancestors cheering you on, or perhaps they are just laughing at your bad software update. If you like these videos and want more content decoding the fucked up systems that run our modern psyche, make sure to subscribe to the channel right now and smash that bell icon so you never miss a dose of biological reality. Thanks for watching. See you next time.